you came up with the original concept for this, right? The whole series?
Yes, over quarantine, Adult Time was doing model time. I don't know if they're still doing model time, but they're having performers shoot their own scenes and, releasing them just as a regular scene. And my original concept for my model time scene was to show like a day in the life of an adult performer from the perspective of their partners. Because my partner is very much behind the scenes, doing everything for me, helping me out every step of the way. And it's thankless work because most of the time people don't even know that the partners exist because some performers keep their relationships really under wraps because they think it'll impact their earnings. Guys won't want to, pay for their subscription sites if they know that they're not actually available, things like that. So I wanted to show how much work they actually do put in. And it kind of evolved in, rather than because it was going to be a POV scene. And as we were filming and it evolved, it just kind of naturally fell into more of a docu series kind of, format, I guess. And after that scene was released and I was getting really good feedback, they're like, oh, this is so cool. Like, I've never seen any porn like this. I was like, this would make a really good series. I bet you people would love to get to know other performers more intimately because there's just not a lot of opportunity to share the core of our beings with people because we're always playing a character rather than ourselves. So I emailed the lovely people at Adult Time and said, hey, what did you guys think of my model time scene? And what do you think of the idea of making more of them, but with other performers? And they're like, we love that idea. And I just thought they were going to say, yeah, we'll get you paired up with one of our director teams and crews, and we'll get this going for you, this idea, and you can contribute. I never expected that they would just, full throttle, put me in the director's chair, give me a budget and say, hey, make your idea. It was really cool. They were so supportive of me exploring my creativity in production and just open to new ideas in general.
So they approved the idea. How do you come up with the casting for this? Is this people you wanted to see do certain things or people you thought might be misunderstood?
So right now we've only shot couples. I do want to expand it into best friends in the industry, roommates. Sometimes there's houses that are full of performers. So there's a lot of different kinds of relationships that go on in the industry. And at the moment, my casting was for my first 3 episodes, casting was, I kind of went through the list of performers I knew in my head were dating. And then I just put out a tweet on Twitter. I was like, hey, are you dating another performer or are you dating somebody who would be willing to perform, kind of like Sin and Drake? Because he's a performer, but he's not a mainstream performer. He just does a lot of clips with her. And I got a good lot of responses, and then I was able to run those by Gamma, and they chose their favorites, and then it was just a matter of scheduling. So that's how I cast the first few. And recently I've been kind of making notes on set because I'm a production assistant for their anatomic crew that shoots all their Pure Taboo, Girls Way, all that stuff. And I've been making a list of girls because you just hear performers talk, they're like, oh, my friend, and you can tell that they're close, or they'll talk about their performer or significant other. So now I'm just writing notes behind the scenes of who I might want to shoot if we get some more episodes.
You've shot 3, correct, so far?
Yes.
Yours aside, is there a favorite between the other ones? There's one that maybe surprised you more?
Well, I haven't yet gotten to watch the second 2. So it's hard to say because I haven't seen the full release. Right. Each day was also so unique because every person that we shot was very unique. I might, just knowing what we shot during the day without knowing how it's cut together, I think my favorite was probably Michael Vegas and Susie Q, because they're just such a quirky couple and not afraid to be themselves whatsoever. They are performers at heart. Like, that's just at the core of their being, but it's not in a not in a fake performative way. They are just, they're actually clowns. Like, that's a part of their like the flow arts that they do, spinning fire and things like that. They literally just like being clowns for people and entertaining people. So that was a really fun day, just because we were entertained all day. It was a lot of fun. We picked some fruits. They showed us their fire spinning, and just generally goofing off that day was a lot of fun. So I think it'll come across very well in the final episode once I see it. I'm very excited to see it.
When you started, you got approved and you shoot. Is there an outline in your head that I have to get this amount of this, and I got to get this amount of sex, and I got to get 20 minutes of that?
Sure. Yeah, I have a couple of requirements from Gamma. We want about 20 minutes of safe for work footage, but that not raw footage, like 20 minutes cut together. So we just kind of filmed the entire day. Obviously not like the entire way through, because that would eat up a lot of card space. But anytime a new thing is happening, we try to make sure the cameras are rolling, at least the BTS cam, even if we're just having a casual conversation. But I do think I need 20 minutes of safe for work footage. I need a 30 to 40 minute sex scene. It's really like 10 minutes of foreplay / softcore and 30 minutes of hardcore. And other than that, the only outline I have in my head is based on what I talk to with the performers before, because we'll set up a phone call, say, hey, what parts of your personality do you want to showcase for this? Like, this is your episode. I don't want to direct you through your day. We want to be more of fly on the wall, just hanging out with your buddies for the day, getting to know them better. And they let me know, like, Michael and Susie said, let's talk about Michael's photography. Let's talk about Susie's activism, the fact that they are constantly shooting together, and their flow arts and spinning fire. So I have that in my head of like, okay, I want to hit the like introduction, like meeting them at their door. I want to hit a home tour, just because I think somebody's home says a lot about them. And I also want to hit the 3 things that they said that they want to focus on. And then of course the sex.
From doing this series, was there any maybe misconceptions you wanted to straighten out? People who think adult performers are these crazy, wild, sexual things who lay around all day and have sex?
Exactly. That was the exact reason I wanted to shoot this series in the first place, because I have very often felt ostracized in the general public because of my job. I am engaged to a civilian, as we call them, and his family and friends had so many misconceptions about who I would be as a person. And while I've experienced it online plenty, it was a lot different to experience it in person. A little bit hurtful, but now I know them all better, and they know me, and they know I'm not just this like crazy party having sex all the time person. And I think it's important, especially with the rise of OnlyFans. I think fans want something really real. I think that's why the industry is shifting towards a more amateur market, because they just want to see real people. And I thought, what better way to do that than to like just go into somebody's home and hang out with them? Because even on something like OnlyFans, they're still shooting content. They're still setting up their camera. They have their wardrobe. They're doing a thing, because they're just creating the sexual fantasy. And while they'll be messaging with their fans, and sometimes they'll post like, oh, I'm at the beach today, just let them know what's going on in their life, I don't feel it gives an intimate enough look into their soul, if you will. Right. Just because they're spreading their attention across 1,000 fans or more. So to be able to actually like sit down with them for a day and see who they are as a person is an experience most fans aren't ever going to get.
When it came time to shoot your episode, Did it take you a while to get you across as opposed to the performer?
So that was the thing about my episode is my episode isn't even for Between the Sheets. It was just model time. It was called The Real Girlfriend Experience. And we were shooting content that entire day. So it was meant to be like a behind the scenes look of a performer shooting content from home so they can see what the process is like as a performer, see how much work it actually is. So the Between the Sheets concept evolved from that scene. So I feel like my persona came through just because my partner and I would like sit and talk about how we were going to shoot some, you know, there's the logistics of shooting different scenes. And because it's a behind the scenes cam, like we shot the entire custom video, and then the camera was just rolling and we were just able to talk casually and figure out how we were going to set up the next scene, where we were going to do it, if we needed to move lights. So it wasn't as much about my personality. I would love to do another episode of Between the Sheets with just I, but I don't know if I would, just because my partner is not in the industry and doesn't plan on being. My model time episode was really special because we shot it in such a way that we never saw his face. Right. That was very difficult to do. And I would like to do it for Between the Sheets, but we kiss a lot when we have sex. So I'm not sure if I will ever get an episode of Between the Sheets where I am with my partner and able to show my personality, but I might do one with my best friend. I think that would be a good one because it's Casey Warner and I always get so silly. We're always doing crafts or some sort of project, and she's my best friend. So I love having sex with her anyway, and I think that can make for a good episode. So I hope to show more of my personality, but I haven't gotten a chance to do that yet. So fingers crossed for more episodes.
You purposely wanted a skeletal crew, is that the right way to say that, for this project? Why did you feel that was important?
I felt a skeleton crew was important for this project because when there's a lot of people behind the camera when you're having sex, it's distracting. You know, it doesn't mean we're not having fun or that we're not getting any pleasure, but it's distracting. It's because, you know, all these different people are paying attention to different things, the sound, there's 2 or 3 camera guys that are all getting different angles, and you're like, oh, how does my body look for each one of these cameras that are all set up in different places? So it's really hard to, like, you know, a one pose fits all the cameras where it actually looks good and flatters your body. And especially because we were going into a performer's home during COVID, we wanted to keep the crew low to lower the risk of any COVID transmission. Adult Time is very concerned about that, and you know, the crew all had masks and everybody was tested, so we did it safely and we kept 6 feet apart as much as possible. But I also think some people do better in small group or one-on-one situations than they are in a large group. And I also think a large group, I think the crew would end up chit-chatting a little too much with the performer, where it becomes about, you know, a crew performer dynamic rather than just them at home with their partner. Because for the most part, we kind of just let them talk and lead the day. You know, I'd interject questions when I wanted some clarification on something, but it wasn't intrusive. And I think a large crew in somebody's home, you know, bringing your work home with you sort of thing would be too intrusive. So we wanted to keep it as small as possible.
And for you as a performer and as a director, what is a good scene? Is it perfectly lit, perfectly angled, and perfectly, or is it the energy and the passion?
I think it's different for every scene. I definitely think it's the energy. I think that's the number one thing. I think people can tell when the energy just isn't there or when it is. And I think it also takes chemistry, because you can have good energy with someone you don't have chemistry with, because that energy can come from some other place inside of you. But you can't beat chemistry for a scene. And who's going to have better chemistry than people who already know each other very intimately in their personal lives? I don't think we get enough opportunities in this industry to see performers with people they have chemistry with. There's been a couple of series, like Adult Time did the We Like Girls. There's Beleza House, which lets people submit stories like, oh, I want to work with this person because whatever, and then they may or may not shoot them together. But it's few and far between that performers actually get to pick who they work with. So it's unique in that way.
You mentioned OnlyFans, and it was changing the concept of how people like material. I agree with you 1,000,000%. Did that consciously, subconsciously affect the way you shot? Did you go into
absolutely. Absolutely. It was the entire reason I came up with the idea for my model time scene, the Real Girlfriend Experience, because I was seeing how many of my fans really enjoyed getting to know me as a person just by messaging them. And I even included some of those fans. I gave them like little cameos in my episode or my scene that I did for Model Time. And I threw out some of their names because we were shooting their custom videos. And we also had them submit questions. So there's a portion, like little cuts here and there in the scene where it's set up kind of like a confessional. And I'm just talking about my relationship, my job in the industry, and how my relationship is affected by it. And all of those questions came from the fans. So I just did it in kind of an interview format where I just answered their questions. So they got to be a part of this scene, which they really liked, and seeing how much they enjoyed, how personal it was for them, and how much I cared about their contribution to it, it just made sense to make more in a similar way.
And now that you've done the OnlyFans format and you've done the feature format, do you have a preference between the two?
They're just different. I can't say that I have a preference because I enjoy both. OnlyFans is nice because, I can just be texting all day. I can be going about my day. I can go to the beach and be taking pictures and video and texting guys. And then doing a professional shoot, it's just fun because you get to see coworkers you haven't seen in a while, get to play dress up a little bit more. There's some sort of a set schedule, which I like sometimes. They just have different purposes, and I can't say I prefer one over the other. They're equally fun and equally fulfilling. It is more dependent on my mood that day as to whether or not I want to have a chill time or be professional and do business and make a big product.
You touched on it earlier, but how much do you think OnlyFans is going to impact the business? Do you think it's going to change it completely? Do you think are performers like yourself looking at it differently now?
I think it's already changed the industry completely. I don't see nearly as many scenes being shot as in the past. There are a lot of really big name performers who are making so much income from their OnlyFans that they no longer need to shoot professional scenes. And when they do shoot professional scenes, it's only for the purpose of keeping their name out there and having that exposure to be able to say, oh yeah, I'm still a porn star, and kind of have that credibility, but they're not going because they need the income or because they necessarily want to anymore. So it's very different. And not only that, now all of these performers who used to be in our own little porn bubble where we would all go to the same testing center, we all had the same protocols and everything. Now there's all of these OnlyFans models who have never done professional porn, doing content trades with professional models, and they want you to have, a brand new test every time. They're not familiar with our pass system. It's a little bit worrisome just because these are people who don't understand that in the industry, at least in the past, we were very careful about, being with people outside of the talent pool. So it's changed a lot of performer dynamics. I think it's put a lot of power back into the performers' hands. A lot of performers are now speaking up for what they want on set. They've increased their rates. They're getting what they want, and the directors are respecting it. It's changed for the better, in my opinion, but I think there's a long ways to go. because there's been talk for the longest time that OnlyFans is going to be trying to kick adult performers off of the site because it was never meant to be an adult platform. So, of course, there's other subscription sites similar to OnlyFans that have been cropping up, but it's hard to say where it's going to go from here. I could foresee a future where all of the sites that we know well and love, Brazzers, Reality Kings, Adult Time, I could potentially see them shifting into something more similar to what I'm doing now, where it's showing the person and then they're just having sex rather than these storylines. I think a lot of people are really sick of all of this step-cessed porn that's happening, but it's still getting made and it's still getting consumed. Otherwise it wouldn't be made. So I think as the older generation, for lack of a better word, dies out, I think, and my generation gets older and starts being and becomes the main consumers, I think we're going to see a very quick decline in scenes that only have like short scenarios and are improvised, and it's just a basic stepmom, stepson kind of scene. I think features will keep getting made, you know, where there's like full scripts and there's a whole storyline and it's a 2-hour movie that happens to have sex in it. But I think OnlyFans is changing things rapidly, and it's really hard to predict where it's going to go from here.
Let's plug your OnlyFans so I don't get in trouble. What is your OnlyFans?
My OnlyFans is at Alison Rey X. You can also find all of my, is it Alison Rey XO? It's Alison Rey XO. I was just corrected. I don't even know because I created a new one to merge my two accounts. But you can find all of my links at AlisonReyFans.com. That's where you can find texting, OnlyFans, my sexy auctions, lingerie for sale, all that stuff.
Do you do custom videos and all that on OnlyFans?
Yes, I do.
Craziest request you got for a custom?
You know, I didn't get this one on OnlyFans, but the craziest request I've ever gotten was an underwater scene. He wanted us to use the hose in the pool, kind of as an underwater vibrator, and we had weight belts, and we had to do it all in 30 to 60 second takes, depending on how long we were able to hold our breath for any particular take. And we had to do about 60 of them because it was a 30-minute custom that he had ordered, all underwater.
Wow. You touched on it earlier, but for you, do your fans want to see a specific sex act from you? BJ's, boy, girl, girl, girl?
Different fans want to see something different. Some of my fans like seeing girl, girl only. Some of my fans like seeing boy, girl. Some of them just want to see solo. I think that's really where the like personality plus sex thing comes into play, because in the past, like, there's girl only performers, and like all of the girl fans would just flock to that person because like that's the sex that they had. But now, if people like you and they just have their own thing, like I have a female fan. She's just lesbian. She just wants to see girl stuff. I have boy girl stuff all over my OnlyFans, but when she and I talk, I only send her my girl stuff because I know that's what she likes. I think it's another reason that people are flocking to OnlyFans is because it's so personalized that way, because they know they're getting it directly from the model, and that the model cares enough about what that person likes to curate, you know, a website that's perfect for them.
How much influence does your social media have on your OnlyFans?
It's really hard to say. I don't think OnlyFans gives a stats section about where your traffic is coming from. At least I haven't found one yet. I do notice when I post that I'm having a sale on Twitter that my following count and subscription prices, like the prices, the subscribers number. I was like, what is that word? So the number of subscribers goes up significantly. So I do think it has a major impact, but in terms of fan retention, I'm not sure.
Sadly, we've had a couple people pass away recently. From your own perspective and your own experiences, does this business put that much pressure on you?
I don't think so. I think for people who pass away from unfortunate circumstances like an overdose, I think that these are people who needed mental help much earlier than they might have gotten it or never got it at all. I do think this industry tends to attract people who need mental health, and that doesn't mean that they're like so mentally ill that they're that they can't function. I have a mental illness. I've had anxiety and an obsessive compulsive disorder since I was 8 years old, but I'm in therapy. I have medication. And I think a lot of people these days are becoming aware that it's a lot more common to have these things than not. It's just that now we're more comfortable talking about it. It's not like there's a higher prevalence of it. It's just more acceptable to talk about it. So I think a lot of those performers use, drugs, alcohol, whatever it might be, as self-medication to cope with whatever they may be dealing with. I think the industry tends to attract people like this because it's very flexible hours. And when you have a mental illness like that, if you have depression, anxiety, bipolar, it's really hard to keep a normal job because we don't function very well in a very, what's the word I'm looking for?
Structure?
Yeah, but rigid, just a rigid structure. We don't work very well in like rigid structured schedules. So working for yourself, being able to just message fans from home or wherever you are, or to be able to shoot a scene here and there is really helpful because it's not the same thing every day. It doesn't just keep your head in that like negative feedback loop
right.
for whatever, mental illness they might be dealing with. And don't get me wrong, I don't think that there's a higher prevalence of mental illness in my industry than any other industry as far as functioning humans go. I just think that it appears that there's more because they're more free to be themselves and rather than following a rigid structure. Because when you follow a rigid structure and you're not good at keeping up with it, you're probably going to get fired rather than, oh, okay, I need to take a month off and then I'll come back sort of thing. So people think it doesn't exist as much in other industries because those people just end up getting fired and then they move on to the next job and the next job and the next job. So you don't see it as often, whereas here they have some stability where like they can take a month for themselves or even a year hiatus, whatever it is, and still be able to have a job when they're feeling better.
Rolling Stone did a piece on Dakota Sky, and one of the topics was, would you feel a producer or director, if they know a person has an issue and they hire them anyway, that they're almost responsible for what happens to the person?
I understand where they're coming from. I also am a firm believer in personal responsibility. And while a person should never be mistreated on set, it is a director's responsibility to make sure that that person is safe on set, that all of their, that consent is being talked about, that they know that they are safe, that they are getting their money, that they're not being abused on set. But just going and performing isn't an issue. Their job is just to make sure that there's a safe environment for that performer. And if they can tell that they're having mental illness, yeah, sure, some directors will send them home and say, hey, like, I don't think this is good. But the other problem is directors, I think a lot of people place blame on directors, when in reality, directors are answering to the boss at the companies in Canada. They're saying, hey, we need this girl with this scene, and you got to get this done, da 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 da. And they're like, man, like, she's a pain to work with. She shows up high, she's whatever. They're like, I don't care. I need the fucking scene because she's popular on Pornhub. And then the directors are put between a rock and a hard place because the director has a job too. Like, they need to eat, they have families. And I think a lot of them are afraid of losing if they say no to their boss and they're like, no, because this girl is, you know, might be a little bit too mentally ill or whatever, that they will lose their jobs, and then, you know, they'll have a problem that way. So instead of just not shooting the girl, they'll shoot her, they'll make it a safe environment for her. But I don't think it's their responsibility. Neither do I think it's the company's responsibility. I think if you have a mental illness, it's important to be aware of it, and it's important to get the help that you need. There's so many resources in the industry. We have Pineapple Support, which is therapy on a sliding scale, so anybody can afford it. There's some free therapists for sex workers out there. And if this job is taking that much of a toll on you, take a break. There's other ways to make money doing, you know, performing from home, doing like Sex Panther, OnlyFans, selling stuff. You don't have to be going on set. So I don't think it's the directors. I think everyone is partially responsible. And I do think we need some sort of different structure in this industry that holds people more accountable. We definitely need a safer industry for everyone. It's getting much better. There are wonderful companies like Adult Time who genuinely care about their performers, their directors, everybody on set. They're constantly checking in. Every time after a scene, they'll make sure they'll send you a survey, make sure everything was on the up and up and all that. So it is slowly changing, and I'm glad to see it. It's just complicated. I think everybody involved plays a role, but I don't think it's anybody's fault.